Welcome to the next edition of the Briefings Direct podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator. There's a common breed of company that, even though it has a relatively small number of employees, does very big jobs with their lean and often distributed workforces. A perfect example of such a concentrated and efficient business is Acore Concrete, which builds large and complex structures across the western United States. When it comes to IT, the lean and mean mantra also holds true for these well-managed teams. The jack of all trades requirements also means that the leadership of IT is also often the head of security. And that's another way that Acore Concrete shines as a prime example. Today's Briefings Direct Security Innovations discussion examines how Acore Concrete has successfully created a security culture that relies on centralized administration, proactive insights, and rapid remediation to assure that the whole company operates at peak performance. Here to share the story of how to best balance resilient security with efficient use of human capital and resources is Andy Black, Chief Information Officer at Acore Concrete Specialists Incorporated in Salt Lake City. Welcome, Andy.
Hello. Thank you.
We're glad to have you with us. So tell us about Acore Concrete and your approach to reaching security objectives. How big is your market? How far are you spread? Maybe even mention a few jobs that people might recognize.
Sure, no problem. So Acore Concrete operates in 7 different states within the western United States. We have 13 offices throughout the western U.S. Our main corporate headquarters is in Salt Lake City, Utah. And from here, we really run the majority of the business as each site operates independently, and yet we still have certain divisions of our organization that operate within each of those various states and others as well where we don't actually have offices. So we need to provide a lot of remote capability, remote access to all of these various locations. And the way that our company is built out, when I came on board several years ago, I determined that the best answer for us was not to have a central data center where all of our servers were stored and all of our applications were housed, because it just made it more complex for every one of those locations to then gain access to that main facility. And because we also were growing, I needed the ability to expand the business quickly and plug in a new location really fast. All we needed was an internet connection. And if I had to then instead rely on trying to establish some sort of a direct VPN connection back to our main data center at the main corporate headquarters, it probably wasn't going to work as well. So we decided at that point to migrate all of our server environment into the Microsoft Azure cloud and set up a VPN connection instead for each office location up into that Azure cloud environment. And so that's really what has enabled us to operate more lean and operate more securely, enabling each location and each office to have a secured connection into our primary applications that we use on our servers through this remote access. And it also enables us, for all of our people that are operating remotely on mobile devices, laptops, and such, to still be able to gain access to our cloud-based environment. And so we have to make sure that that's obviously secured, but that's basically how we've configured our environment. So every physical location, as well as all of our remote workers, have that access into our cloud resources.
Yeah, Andy, we hear so much these days about remote work and whether that's the right fit for the long term. It seems to me, though, that what's most important is that you have the flexibility and the agility to be location independent, that you can get the work done regardless of where the people are, where they need to be. So that's an important observation that you guys are obviously well ahead on. Tell me, what have been some of the major challenges to reaching those security requirements that you mentioned with, for example, 13 offices spread around the country?
Well, a great example that's coming to mind right now, we are currently working on one of the largest renovation projects in our country, and that is through the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints LDS Temple renovation project that's going on in downtown Salt Lake City. Now, interestingly enough, while we're on that particular project and we're having to do a lot of very, very intense and technical and interesting work on cutting the facility, basically, we're lifting the entire temple off of the ground to put earthquake prevention materials within the facility, drilling holes down the sides of the temple and everything. And of course, this is a historic landmark as well. And so we have to retain and really protect this facility. But we're working on that job site in conjunction with other companies as well. and we are a subcontractor in partnership with the main host organization who is doing a lot of that particular construction. And so we have managers and our admins working in that other company's trailer. And so we're relying on that other company's internet connection for the majority of their work. And yet our people still need to have access to our main company resources. So for them, for example, we have set up a VPN client that they load on their individual computers so they can simply, again, rely on that internet connection and still tap into our Microsoft Azure cloud. Now, for all of our other main office locations, certainly we have firewalls in place, and each firewall is configured with that VPN client. But the way we've configured and built this out so that everything is cloud-based, while we can secure it with a VPN connection, still puts us in a little bit of a tight spot at times because, again, people are all over the place. They might be using a cell phone as a mobile hotspot or in an airport Wi-Fi, right? And so while they have that VPN connection, to me, that still does not protect them 100%, right? We're aware that there are a number of hacks and other issues out there where they take advantage of VPN and even RDS types of connections into those remote access servers in that cloud environment. And so we have to be able to still protect and secure those as well. And so as a result, I rely on a lot of the particular services and support that I get from Bitdefender in securing our particular computers and those connections so that they can still be remote, they can be in these other offices shared with other companies, and we can still have secured access to our resources.
Sure, the days of creating a fortress and a moat, a perimeter that you can protect and beef up from time to time, those are gone because there is no perimeter. The perimeter is everywhere. Now, what do you look for as some of the top requirements on the endpoint in order to then take advantage of your distribution, use of cloud, and the use of protected networks?
Well, one of the main reasons that I chose to move to Bitdefender in the first place was its really high quality and reputation when it comes to ransomware protection. And the reason why that was one of my primary things that I was looking for is as a result of an instance that we had an attack that we had to handle several years ago. And the solution that we had at the time, while it helped prevent the vast majority, we still had a couple of machines that were hit. And I needed to find a good, solid solution. And so that solution was, at the time when I did all of my research, Bitdefender. Bitdefender came out on top of that list. And so we determined that by installing Bitdefender, not only gave us an endpoint protection solution that did the ransomware protection, but it gave us the antivirus, anti-malware, and other resources to really protect the security of that local device. And then at the same time, because we still see, even today, so much attack perimeter coming through email, that we tapped into the email filtering solution from Bitdefender as well. And so we really rely very heavily on that solution to handle the local desktops, the laptops, those devices, as well as all of our communication through email to make sure that we protect ourselves as much as we possibly can, at least from the backside, right? The IT side. That doesn't say that we still have to train the users, right? The weakest point in any security system is still the users, and the users can still click on things and they can still open things. But at least by having the endpoint protection solution and the email filtering solution in place, we really feel like that gives us a really good perimeter, if you will, to try to protect us and keep us much more secure when it comes to managing all of these devices that are all over the place.
Right. And when it comes to partners like your security partner, not only are they focused on the requirements at the endpoints, but they too have also adopted cloud architectures like you have. And how are you able to use the management, the consoles, the fact that they're leveraging cloud services in order to give you the centralized control regardless of where your users are?
And that's a really great question. And it just brings to mind that not only do we have our own primary server in the cloud that we use for specific systems in our environment, but we also outsource and use many other vendor-related hosted services, right? Software as a service for many other applications. And most of those are also hosted in Amazon Web Services or Azure, right? So they're all cloud hosted as well, as you'd indicated. And so we may have one type of connection to one location, but on that same computer, we're doing 10 other things and 10 other resources going to other cloud hosted services. So I have, through Bitdefender, a great console that we use for two purposes. In that, the first purpose is so that on the main desktop, I can see all of the connected devices, and I can see which devices have had what things blocked, whether it's been blocked, whether it's been quarantined, whether it's been deleted, so I can on a snapshot open it up and say, do I have any devices out there that are jumping out and saying, hey, something just happened, we need to look at this right now. And I've also received notifications so that if somebody's machine suddenly, they click on the wrong device, whatever, the wrong link, it'll give me a notification and say, hey, you need to go look at this particular computer. So that primary console has been great. And through that console, there's also links where I can pull up each individual computer, and it makes the recommendations for how to better secure that specific device. And several of those I can click on and it will automatically make the adjustment for me and make that fix. And then in others, it actually relates more to group policy kinds of changes that we can make on our network. So each device within the entire company could be adjusted based on those particular recommendations. And that's all the primary endpoint protection console that I use. And then secondary to that is the email filtering console. And I dive into that on a regular basis. And I'm looking at, okay, what's getting blocked? What's getting filtered? Should this really be going through? Should this not be going through? Is it virus related? Is it malware? Is it simply a phishing scam? Is it marketing? I look at that on a regular basis as well, just to make sure that the right stuff's getting blocked. And that if something does get blocked, it really shouldn't, I can still at least release it and get it right to our end users very quickly. So these particular tools have been very, very helpful for me in trying to manage the endpoint protection and manage our communications through our email service.
And because, Andy, you're the chief information officer, not the chief information security officer, you're juggling a lot of different priorities. And one of the things that is hard for people to balance is getting too much information. Do you find something about the way that this management console and services is tuned and the user interface is designed helps you not get overwhelmed, but to find the right balance of the right information at the right time so that you can work through that problem quickly and move on to your other responsibilities?
So when we first implemented the email filtering solution a while ago, we weren't really entirely certain how best to make it work. And so we put specific settings in place, and it seemed like we were still blocking more than we really wanted to block. But we have the ability to very easily open this console and then, let's shift this here, change this there, make an adjustment and see how that then works. Now, ultimately, I got to a point where I reached out for help, and I decided that I needed to get more assistance from Bitdefender specifically, and I was assigned a specific individual who then put me in contact with the more technical back end so that they could help me more specifically adjust and configure and change our parameters for the email filtering solution so that we could better get the things that needed to come through and block the things that didn't need to come through. One specific piece to that was the marketing component. So people get all of the spam emails all the time, right? And there's in the email filter solution, 3 specific selections. You have a marketing, low reputation, a medium reputation, and a high reputation. And because we were getting so much spam, I decided that I wanted to block that medium reputation email as well and have that filtered out. And so while it greatly reduced the amount of spam email that everybody got, we discovered about a month later that it was also blocking bid requests. And when I say bid requests, we have a number of our managers throughout the company at every state that we're in that are subscribed to various resources that would automatically send out to these managers current job bid requests, right? They have a job that's going on in such and such a location. We need to know about it so we can provide a bid on that particular job. Well, we discovered, like I said, a month later that all of those were also getting blocked because they were being treated as a marketing medium. And that wasn't the right answer. So I made one more adjustment and I talked to the managers through my company. I said, okay, well, if I adjust this so that we don't miss these bids, you will still get all of these other marketing emails. And they said, no, that's fine. We'd rather get the marketing together with these bid requests than miss the bid requests and then miss out on potential job bids that we could get into. So it's very customizable. There's a lot of adjustments that we can make, and sometimes it's just a tweak here and a tweak there. But what I found was very, very helpful, again, was that I had the ability to tap into Bitdefender's back end, talk to the right people, have them sit down, see my screen, and we could work through it together, and they could teach me what things did. And as you said, I'm not necessarily the security expert. I just need to still manage all of this environment, all the data and information that's coming through. So having them as a resource was also very helpful to reconfigure our system and make it work better for our needs.
Sure. And then an adjunct to that flexibility and control, the ability to scale up or down based on your variables and your requirements, is you want proactivity. You want the machine to do some of the work for you, anticipate some of the things, and offer analytics. So when it comes to that proactive approach, is there something about the way that the interface and the data and the analytics come together that gives you a sense of security about your security?
The display in the interface for the endpoint protection is very, very useful. In fact, in working with those same Bitdefender consultants, they helped me put the right quadrants in the right spots, select which reporting features would be the most useful, and that would show me all the correct data. And, we're visual people, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. And so rather than just looking at tables or lists and lists of things that appear, it's much easier to see it visually. And one interesting thing about the dashboard is that I can click on a specific link or a specific dashboard icon, and then it will take me to more information and greater depth and greater detail. So at a glance, that executive dashboard is very helpful first to see exactly where we're at, what's the number of threats coming through. I can quickly determine, are we seeing a uptick in an attack perimeter at the moment or not? What's being hit? And if I want greater detail, I click on it, I pull it up, and I can get more information that way. And so that particular resource has been very helpful. And again, once it's set up, and I know it's there and I trust it, this isn't something I have to go into every single day. I'm not tapping into this every day, right? That's not really my role overall. But when I need to, or if there's something that's happening, I can tap into it very quickly, pull it right up, see what's happening, talk to my team and say, let's go attack these particular systems. This one's questionable. We're not sure what's going on here. Jump on that one. It's a great management tool from that perspective.
Well, it sure sounds like it's a fit-for-purpose management approach, which is so important when you're in a lean and mean environment. You mentioned earlier, Andy, that your end users and their behavior are such an important part of security. Is there something about the way that you're getting information about what's going on at your endpoints, in your network, in your behaviors across your workforce that you can take back to them and reinforce the right kinds of behaviors, but without punishing them or making them feel like it's hopeless? Is there a way that you can instill a security culture based on the information you have that takes it back and makes it proactive to how you can train, in a sense, your workers to be diligent about their best practices?
One of the things that I did within ACOR is a couple of years ago, we determined as a leadership team it would be very beneficial and helpful for us to meet on a weekly basis across the company and do a training of some sort. And I've trained on all sorts of different things within the organization, but one of the key things that I continue to bring up about, monthly, maybe every 6 to 8 weeks, is security. And I will bring up and say, here's the most recent thing that we're dealing with. Here are the most recent attacks. And then every once in a while, something may come through our email, right? No solution is 100% perfect. And so I still have to rely on my users to know and be aware and look at what's coming through to make sure that it's still good or bad. And so we have a phishing report link option. So if something comes through and it looks fishy, they click the link and it automatically then sends to my team. And we see this email of what it is, and we can double check and verify whether or not it's good or bad. And if it's bad, we can obviously let the user know and thank them and congratulate them for being proactive and determining, yep, sure enough, that's not the right thing. And then depending on what's coming through, sometimes I will take screenshots of that and I will send out a communication across the company to, hey, everybody, these are certain things that are right now happening. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad, right? So you don't want to open these. And then during these Friday trainings that I have with the company, I can discuss with people, what are you seeing? How do we look at and break down one of these messages and these emails to determine, is this really a valid email? And if not, how do we recognize that? How do we determine it? And so by helping and working with all of the people throughout the company on a regular basis, having these conversations, showing them the examples, taking these screenshots and so on, it's really helped me to create a greater security culture within the organization and a lot of a smarter user base so they can be more proactive on their own end and say, yeah, this is bad, or I'm not really sure about this particular one, Andy. Let me send this to you and have you double check it for me just to be sure. And I will say that the vast majority of the time, it's worked very, very well. Now, still, yeah, people can make a mistake. I had a user literally a week ago click on a link that said they needed to redo their email password. I can't remember what it was. And sure enough, it takes them to a spoofed site, and they didn't think fast enough. And sure enough, they entered their credentials, at which point then they immediately went, okay, that was probably bad. So Andy, help me. So the next thing you know, of course, we're okay, let me help you reset your account, reset your password immediately so that whatever just got compromised is no longer there. But at least people are aware, right? They're thinking. Even if they click the button afterwards, they're like, yeah, that probably wasn't the right answer. Let's jump on. Let's talk to Andy's team and let's see what we can get fixed. So I think helping create that security culture also makes a big difference. Because as I talk to people all the time, in IT, we can put all of the infrastructure in place. We can have the firewalls and the VPNs and the endpoint protection and the antivirus and the anti-malware and all of that. But at the end of the day, it still is up to the end user. They are the last point of protection. And so they need to also be aware. They need to be looking and be cognizant of what they're dealing with. So, the more we can work with them, the better as well.
All right. That root cause analysis and learning what's been behind problems is one part of the solution, as you point out, and relaying that to behavioral adjustments is another. But what about the ability to react as a security professional when something does go wrong? Is there something about the way your security apparatus is designed that helps you nip it in the bud?
First, looking back at the console that I was mentioning earlier within Bitdefender, I can see whose machines have been recently, they blocked something, a virus came through, they quarantined it, whatever. And so then I can again have my team go out and look at that specific computer and see if something got through. But I will tell you that if Bitdefender says it blocked it, and it hasn't really been an issue. But it also tells me who those users are, so I know if there's a specific individual that we need to work with. Okay, now it looks like you've got 6 times in the last week that you've clicked on things. Let's talk about this. What is it that's going on? Let's make sure you've figured that out. Now, again, looking at it from the leadership perspective, I can put all of the infrastructure in place, but I also, as you said, need to have the ability to recover should somebody do something that they shouldn't have. So having all of my backups in place, my replications in place, whether it's cloud-based or otherwise, having my resources, my applications, my files stored in different locations so it's not all in one bucket, so that if something does happen to get through, it's that one piece that might be affected, not the entire organization, right? So it's more of a mindset of how I've built out the infrastructure to support my company specifically to meet our needs, so that if one particular site has an issue or one particular application has an issue, it can be isolated to that specific component. And we have the backups, the replications, all of that disaster recovery in place so that if the worst happens, we're not going to be completely out of business that fast. Now, one last piece to that. It's very important to have the communication ahead of time with the business leadership, the ownership, so that should something come through, and I'll talk ransomware really fast, that's not just locked a computer, right? We could restore a computer. We can restore from a backup. That's fine. You might lose a day. It's not going to kill us. But one of the biggest things with ransomware that's happening today is not just the encryption of a computer, but where the bad people will get in, pull data out first and hang on to your information. And then they want to charge you a ransom because they're going to threaten to release your information, right? So they want you to pay the ransom to not release, and to then pay a ransom to, decrypt your devices and your systems. And so the issue is more with the information that they've gathered. If you can have a conversation and have that decision made ahead of time with the organization, you can let your leadership know, here's how you've got your backups, here's how you've got your encryption, here's how your data is being protected. And if somebody comes in and says, we've got your data, we will release it unless you pay a ransom, you can have at least had a game plan and a decision made ahead of time so that it's not, responsive, knee-jerk reaction to just immediately pay the ransom to save us, right? Have those conversations, have that plan in place already so you're ready to go if and when that occurs.
Yeah, so now you're talking about operational resiliency, to have those plans have those loose leaf binders in place with the right steps to take when you need it, and then having the data at your disposal to then act. So that's a huge part of a good, solid security culture. So I commend you for that. Let's talk a little bit before we sign off about the future, where things go next. Are you concerned about the number of different endpoints that you might be involved with? You have a construction business with different work sites, lots of equipment, new equipment coming online all the time with more network connections, more sensors, more endpoints. So do you feel like you're going to have to expand your event horizon across more endpoints to remain as secure as you are now?
To a degree, yes. In fact, the two fronts that really don't really keep me up at night per se, but that are in the back of my mind are the mobile devices, because we do have a lot of our applications accessible on cell phones, on tablets, iPads, for example. It's more than just the desktop computer anymore. It's not just a Windows or an Apple-based, machine. It's definitely those mobile devices. And half of our work, well, actually more like 2/3 of our company, of our workforce, are field operators. They are the guys out in the field actually cutting the concrete, actually doing the freeway work and so on. And so they rely entirely on a mobile device, their cell phone, their tablet. And so I have to be able to secure those devices as well. And the number of those devices is only going to grow. Our business continues to grow. And as we expand, we go into other locations, I'm going to have more people that are going to have those mobile devices. And so that's a huge front for me that I really need to make sure that I have protection services in place. Now, secondary to that is artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the reason I say those two is because through those two, people create bots. And with those bots, you can create millions of these bots, and those bots are the ones that do the work trying to find a way to hack in. So the more intelligent AI and ML becomes, the stronger your own defense needs to be. And so the more we can incorporate our own AI and ML into our defense environment on the computers, on the mobile devices, in our endpoint protection and so on, then the better we can be, hopefully, to help prevent the bad guys who are also using those same tools to come at us. So right now, to me, those are my two biggest fronts going forward that I'm the most concerned about.
Andy, any advice to organizations that are like you, that are distributed, that are lean, that have big jobs but a small workforce and perhaps also a fairly lean and mean IT department? Any thoughts that you would impart to them as they try to improve their security posture?
A lot of the smaller to mid-sized businesses, they all realize that computers and technology are required to keep them in business and to press forward, but they're still not really, willing to spend the money that it might need in order to bring that protection. And they try to play the risk game. How long can we go until we get hit? Oh, we're not going to get hit. We're too small of a company. We're not a target. Well, what we're finding is that's actually the biggest target is the small to medium-sized businesses, because they tend to not have invested into their security to protect themselves. And so that's where those weaknesses come in. And again, those same organizations, while they do the bare minimum, they might have an endpoint protection solution on their computers, but they're not necessarily securing their mobile devices. They're not necessarily creating and working with their people to create that culture of security. And so it doesn't take a lot. It's not a huge investment in most cases, but it does make a world of difference to protect a business if you will make that more of a priority, because it's going to cost a lot more to recover than it would be to prevent in many of those cases.
Well, that's great advice. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. You've been listening to a sponsored Briefings Direct discussion on how concentrated and efficient businesses like Acor Concrete build security cultures that rely on centralized administration, proactive insights, and rapid remediation to move safely at the preferred and optimized mode of business. So a big thank you to our guests. Please join me in thanking Andy Black, Chief Information Officer at Acor Concrete Specialists. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at InterArmor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing series of Briefings Direct discussions. And a big thank you to our sponsor as well, Bitdefender, for supporting these presentations. Our last big thank you goes out to our audience. That's you for joining us. Please pass this along to your IT and security communities if you think this is useful, and do come back next time.